Good evening all, and welcome to part 6 of my Rock-Ola rebuild project. As you've seen in the last 5 episodes, we've finally had some luck. All the electromechanical bits are working now. It plays and selects and does what a jukebox should, but of course we've got no noise yet because we haven't started on that amplifier. So this episode we're going to hopefully get some joy out of it. Right, time to take a look at this here amplifier, I think. I'm not even going to try plugging it in until I've had a good look inside and see what kind of state it's in. But it looks like it comes out easily enough. There's just a couple of bolts on the top. I'll pull them out. There's one. Oh, I'm going to disconnect that plug. There's only that one left plugged into it anyway. I think that's the speaker connector. The other one's the power supply connector, which I've never connected, as I suspect it'll need some looking at. If we undo this little gubbins here, there we go. I think the whole thing should just come out as one module. He says trying to do it one-handed. And there it is. Big hole in the back of the jukebox. And one condition unknown Rock-Ola amplifier. Well, there's the amplifier in all its glory then. Nice simple modular design. That socket there, that's power in. That's the speaker output. That is the connection for the volume control, which I'm currently missing. We have to build something for that. Turntable plugs in there. You've got settings up the top here for bass and treble for the left and right channels. European and standard EQ settings. A little bit of adjustments. You can run it in mono if you want to, and it's got a scratch filter as well. I mean, it's just designed to be an amplifier for playing vinyl with, and I'm hoping I can get it working. We shall see. I have had some experience with these before, because the Rock-Ola I've got is not identical, but it's a very similar amp. I mean, it was an amp that was built about 4 years later than this one, so I'm not expecting the inside to be vastly different to what I've seen before, but they're pretty easy to take apart and fiddle with. A couple of screws there. Well, there's only one there in fact. One's missing. That tells me that somebody's been in here before. But actually I did notice on this, if you look on the front, it has been checked in 1983, and if the rest of this jukebox is anything to go by, that's probably the last time it's seen any proper service. But this bit should open up now. There we go. Well, opens and exposes some rather dusty guts inside it. So I think I need to open it up properly, have a decent look, and see what kind of states everything's in before I even try plugging it in. So with the two halves separated, it's just a couple of connectors to separate it off. It's quite easy to work on. Let's have a look inside. Obviously this is the front cover. The top board there, that's just got all the switch gear for the bass and treble controls and the mute relay and all that kind of stuff. I don't think there's much actual electronics going on in there. The first stage is really down here. These two modules here, you can see that's the turntable input socket there, and you can see the wires from those are going off to these two modules. So these are clearly the preamp sections for the magnetic cartridge. Looking at the ICs on them, turn it up the right way. MC1458N. That's a donkey's years old dual op amp. They've been around since the dawn of time, and they're still making them to this day. Very similar to a 741, just it's kind of like two 741s in one package, electrically speaking. So if there's any problem with that, that won't be a problem to replace. Everything else looks pretty generic, other than these funny looking things. I assume they're resistors. Like sort of a package of resistors in one little pack. Odd little components there. But, to the right, there's these two boards here. I don't know exactly what they do. There might be more tone control. I think on these amplifiers there's some sort of automatic limiter level control to try and equalise the gain of different records. So one of these could be some sort of automatic level control circuit. The other one might be a tone control board. Moving on to the actual guts of it. Obviously, down the left side, this is obviously the power supply side of things. If we lift that up, there's not a great deal under there. It's just holding that big capacitor and a couple of fuse holders. So I'm not one of these people when it comes to rebuilding an amplifier. A lot of people, as soon as they get this, the first thought is, right, change all the electrolytics, upgrade it all. I'm not really that school of thought, especially the sort of smaller electrolytic caps like you'd find on signal boards like that. 9 times out of 10, you can leave them alone. They'll be perfectly fine when they're running at signal level. The capacitors that wear out are the ones that are doing the hard work, passing a lot of current and getting warm. And frankly, that means this one here and probably those two down here. If any capacitors on this amp have gone bad, you can guarantee it'll be those. On the last Rock-Ola I had to replace the two main power filter caps because it was humming like buggery until I swapped them out. But the smaller ones on the board, generally you'll find they'll be okay, but who knows. I noticed, like I said, I saw this thing has got a sticker on it saying it was last tested in 1983, and it does look like it's had some work done. If you look, these are clearly the two driver boards that run the main amplifier transistors underneath on the heatsink. If you look, they don't match. I would say that these two are the original driver transistors, and these two, the TIP 42 and 41, they've probably been replaced at some point later on. But again, it's not a difficult part to source. If it has gone bad, not a problem, I can get those. I haven't had a look and see what the main driver transistors are. If memory serves, there's something like a 2N3055 or something very similar to. It's either 2 or 4 per channel. I think it's a pair per channel. We've got some a couple of diodes there. I imagine that's probably just power rectification. Some big wire round resistors, but again, look, it's a bit dusty and grimy, but I'm not seeing any real damage. You know, I was expecting to find sort of scorched components and things in a far worse state than they really are. The only thing I've noticed is that if you look at the bottom of the plate, it's obviously got wet at some point, and it's probably had a drink spilled over the top of it or something like that. But physically, at least, it looks like it's in pretty good shape. It just wants a bit of a clean up, and then we'll put it back together. Having had a look inside, I feel a bit more confident about plugging it in, see what it does. But my money's on probably having to replace a filter cap or two. We shall see. Before I can do anything with it, before it's even worth trying to plug it in, I need to replace some of the missing parts. In particular, the volume control system. There's a little plug-in thing on the front where you plug the volume control in, and there should be a potentiometer on the back, but unfortunately it seems to be missing on this one. Somebody must have borrowed it at some point in its life, but either way, it's no point plugging it in until I've got a volume control. Fortunately, I have another amplifier. It's out of my Rock-Ola Max, which I've borrowed for the evening, just to have a bit of a look and see what makes it tick. Well, this is the amplifier out of my Rock-Ola Max. As you can see, that's the volume control plug-in bit, which the 456 one should have, but somebody's robbed. It's not an identical amplifier, but it's similar enough that we should be able to work out what we're doing with this. I've already unbolted the back of the pot, and if we have a look, there it is. Now, first thing you notice is this gubbins hanging off the back of it, and I've seen these inside the amplifier. I thought it was just like a bank of resistors or something, but it turns out it's something called a PEC, which is a printed electronic circuit, and it's like a sort of hybrid forerunner to ICs as we know them today. Inside this is a simple circuit full of capacitors and resistors, apparently. So it's a rather strange hybrid, this old amplifier. Given that it does have actual ICs in it. It uses op amps, it uses transistors, and it's also got these rather primitive leftovers from the valve era. But the problem is, this looks like it was a custom one that was made for Rock-Ola. God knows where you get one of these from. I think you've got more chance of platting piss, but not going to get one of those. The other issue is the potentiometer itself. I don't know what value it is. I can't find anything in the schematics for it. It's a dual gang pot, which, okay, I can get one of those, not a problem. But then you notice it's got these extra connections on the end. I've never seen that ever on a potentiometer before, and I've been doing a bit of looking online, and apparently tapped potentiometers were a thing many years ago. So obviously you've got the two main ends of the carbon track there and there, and the centre connection goes to the wiper, just like any other normal potentiometer. But then these extra two connections here and here, they go to somewhere else along the track, and it's a tapped potentiometer. I've had a look around. I've got Bob open finding one of these things. The only silver lining being that from what I can see, there's no circuit diagram for these amplifiers in the actual official service manual for this thing. I did manage to find a circuit diagram online. If we just have a look at that now. Yeah, it's not identical, but it's similar enough. You can see it's marked on the circuit diagram. You can see there the multi-pin plug where the volume control plugs in. And from what I can tell, that little PEC, as you can see, it's just resistors and capacitors. And the way it's wired across the potentiometer, I would say that's some sort of RC tone control network. If I had to guess, I'd say it's probably a loudness circuit, so that when the volume's turned down low, it gives you a bit of extra bass boost to keep it sounding sweet. Looking at it, I don't think it's vital that circuit is there. I can probably make do without that, which does mean that I can just use a standard dual gain potentiometer. I mean, I don't know what value. I'm going to guess something like a sort of 10k linear dual gain. That should do the job. I'll try making up something like that, and at least it gives us a stepping point to power the thing up and see if there's any life in it. And back to the scene of the crime then. Been having a bit of a fiddle over the weekend when I got a few spare minutes. The bulbs that do the selection now playing, predictably for a machine this old, some of these bulbs have blown. You know, in particular this first one here for side one, you know, that obviously spends a lot more time on than most of the others. These bulbs are a bit odd actually. I haven't actually seen these before. If I take one out, there we go. It's a type 53 apparently, which is 14.4 volts on a little bayonet end. But I had a look online, they're very hard to come by. Fortunately, Jukebox Parts sell them for £1 a piece, so I think I'll be doing a bulk order of those. I've spotted at least 2 or 3 that are gone, so I'll probably just pick up 5 or 6 of them. That'll keep me going for a bit. But need all the lights to work, it's got to be right. But anyway, back to the job in hand, the selection. When I've had a go at playing records on it, occasionally you're punching a number, it finds it, it reads in, it writes out, no problem. But more often than not, you pick a selection and the writing carriage just keeps going round and round and round looking for the selection and never finds it. And that's almost certainly going to be because these little contacts here, each one of those little blobby contacts represents one record. And if there's any dirt on the contact or on the wiper next to it, then it's not going to pick it up and it's just going to keep hunting. So it's did this on the other side with the write-out sequence, the readout sequence even. But I never got around to cleaning this side, so that's going to be tonight's job. So once again, we have the Servosol, some 1000 grit emery paper, and I'm going to get cleaning. Let's get the emery wet, and I'll get a bit of a squirty down there. I need some more Servosol at this rate. Let's give these contacts a bit of a once over. Yeah, that needed doing. Right, I'm going to carry on doing the rest of these. Okay, so back in the workshop this evening, having a closer look at this volume control. This is the one off my existing Rock-Ola. As we saw earlier, it's nothing like the ones you can buy now with these extra tapered bits here. And what I have got in the junk box is one of these, which is a very similar machine. It's a dual gain pot. Value wise, it's 100k, whereas I'm not exactly sure what this is, but the general consensus seems to be what I need is a 50k. But 50k, 100k, yada yada, I think it'll do the job. So I just need to copy the wiring here. Not going to be able to copy all this stuff here because this PEC thing, that's some sort of loudness filter thing. But we can live without that. If I can just get the volume control to work as a volume control, if nothing else, it means I can start testing the amplifier. So what we've got here is a 4-core screen cable, which goes back to the little plug that goes into the front of the amplifier. I haven't got one of those little plugs. We'll have to bodge something for that as well in the meantime. I haven't got any of this 4-core cable. What I have got is a length of this sort of figure 8 audio screen cable. It's a bit like a headphone cable, but a bit thicker. It'll do. It's screened anyway. I've already stripped the ends on these two, so just need to chop that one out. Just nibble that with the cutters, strip it back. Need to separate the screen from the core. There That's separated that. So now we've got, there we go, so we've got left, right and common. Likewise the other bit. Separate that down. Twist that together, left, right and common. Do the ends. Some people use wire strippers. I've never seen the point. Side cutters seem to do the job just fine. Twist that together. There we go. That was that. And that one there. Now it's time to get a bit of solder on it. There we go. Rubber solder on that. That was that one. I need to twist the two commons together. There we go. I'll tin that as well to keep it stuck together. That'll do. Right, let's get some solder on these solder tags on the pot. Now the actual volume control circuit itself, I had a look obviously at the one on my Rock-Ola. It's very similar. Well, in fact it's as simple as it gets really. If you look there, you can see the grounds are tied together, and then you've got input and output, and for the left channel, and input and output for the right channel. Simple as that. And then the other end of that goes back to that plug. But of course I needed to see that plug to know which pin goes where. But we'll get onto that in a bit. Let's get these wires on. So first of all, it's important when you're doing these to get the ground the right way round. It goes to one side, and you can see on here, yeah, it's the left hand side. Good. It would work if you had that as ground and that as input, but it would mean that when it would turn the wrong way. You know, you'd be turning it that way to turn it down instead of that way. So it's important to get that the right way around. You always have to think about it and double check. But yeah, that side wants to be, yeah, that side's ground, because the central wiper, when you turn it all the way there, is shorting the output to ground, which of course stops the sound. So we'll solder that on. Really ought to be something like an octopus for soldering, because you always seem to need more hands than you were blessed with. You know, you're trying to hold the iron, you're trying to hold the solder, and you're trying to hold the thing that you're trying to solder. Sometimes two things at once in this case. So yes, 4 hands would be very useful for this job, but hey, what can you do? So, right, so we'll call this, yeah, actually, we'll have that as, how should we do this best? Yeah, let's keep them on the same cable. So the input will be the white, and the red will be the output. So we'll stick this white one on here. And the red one off that cable so it can go in the middle. Fingers and thumbs tonight. That'll do nicely. And likewise for the other channel. There's 2 pots because obviously it's stereo left and right. We'll stick the red one again to the middle on that one. There we go. And that, in essence, is the volume control. Simple as that. I just need to take the other end of that cable, and these ends need to be stripped and bared, and need to do something to allow them to plug into that socket. So looking at that plug and the socket it plugs into, it's rather reminiscent of an old valve base, but that's the plug and socket thing. So I need to replicate this somehow. Now I don't even know what type of plug you'd call that, so I don't even know where to begin to look for it. But I'm wondering if I can bodge something. If we take an XLR plug, which is that, those pins I would say are about the right size. Now if I can pull these pins out of this housing, that gives me something I can solder the wires to. Maybe I could make this plastic bit where I could fashion something to hold the new set of 5 or 6 pins, whatever it is, into the socket. I'm going to try dismantling this and see if I can get the pins out in one piece. Yeah, that seems to work. Just a bit of brute force and ignorance with a set of side cutters, and the plastic breaks up. It's never going to be an XLR plug again, but that might just do nicely as something to push into the socket with a handy solder tab at the top. It says if it'll focus. There we go. Okay, we've got some pins. There we go, there's one. Just going to tin it and attach a wire to it. So with that built up, just need to put the volume control into this slightly iffy jukebox amplifier. There we go. So that's what's inside there. That's where the volume control should be. That's below it is the rejection switch. You can see the 2 wires being cut here. I would say that's where somebody has had a remote reject switch sometime in the jukebox's life, and they've just bodged it across the switch contacts, which, to be fair, is probably what I'll do when I do it as well. But let's get this volume knob in. That goes in like that. That'll be right. And we just need to do the nut up on the other side. There we go. Unmounted volume knob. We're in there now. We just need to route the cable back through that little hole there, and then we'll stick the pins in the holes. There we go, just like that. So that tucks into that little groove there, and you can shut that little flap down, and that just leaves these wires to plug into that. Simples. Now, what I do need to do is get the test meter on this existing volume control and work out with an ohm meter which pins go to which contacts here, so I can copy it on the one that I've just built. So for example, let's find the ground, which is on there, and one of these pins has got to be ground. And it's that one. So I'll do the same for the new volume control and carry on like that until I've worked them all out. And there you have it, one volume control. It's a bit of a dirty bodge, but at least it means I've got a complete amplifier to start testing. There's no point spending a lot of time and money on this until if I know if it's actually a going concern or not, and it's just a bit of a dirty bodge, just to get it up and running hopefully, and we'll see where it stands. And if we get the amp up and running properly, I'll do something a bit more nice with that. But in the meantime, I think it's ready to take home. We just need to lash some speakers up to it, hook it up to the jukebox and see what it does. Now of course I'm going to need some donor speakers to test this thing out. I have got some half decent hi-fi speakers knocking about, but I don't really want to plug those in on the first attempt. I don't know what it's going to do. It might just throw a load of DC up and throw it sky high. I was out and about in town a couple of days ago, and by the side of the road I found a pair of these. Now as speakers go, they're pretty old and tatty. It's a shame. Probably used to be something quite nice and hi-fi once upon a time, but hopefully there's a few working drivers there that'll do just for testing purposes. Okay guys, well the amplifier's plugged all in, all the connections are made down here. We've got our temporary bodge volume pot, we've got power and speakers connected, and down here of course we've got the 2 speakers that I've reclaimed off an old scrap pair of hi-fi cabs and just wired up to the amplifier outputs. So everything's connected, but is it going to work? Now I'll be honest, I'm not holding out a lot of hope for this because we've been lucky so far. We've had no blown fuses since I've been doing this job, but if any time anything's going to go pop, it's going to be now, I think. The thought occurs that yes, those capacitors on the filter side are a bit tired and it's got bits missing out of it that I've had to replace. Now if somebody's been robbing things like volume pots out of it, it's probably because it's knackered. So I'm fully expecting this to not work, but what the hell, we'll give it a go, we'll see what happens. Right, We have a plug. Let's see what we get. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Now, you probably wouldn't have picked that up in the camera. I picked up a little click on these speakers down here. I think let's get a meter on it and see if there's any DC present. Range. I'm seeing no DC on that one. And no DC on that one. Well, that's a good sign. As far as I can tell, nothing's gone pop and the speakers haven't been killed. I think the next thing to try is to make a selection. Now obviously we're not getting any sound out the record because I still don't have a wire that connects the tone arm to the amplifier, but what I have got is a little bit of wire that I can shove in the amplifier input socket, and if we get a buzz out of it, we know there's some life in it. I don't think it'll make any noise until it's in the selection mode though, so I'll have to put a record on. There's something in 120. So if I dial in 120, 1, 2, 5. Okay, so that's running. Right, now, is there any noise from the input socket? One side's working, and so's the other. How about that? Of course, we've got no idea how well it sounds, but it's alive and it's making noise. To me, just sticking a wire in a hole. Do you know what? That's a really great noise to hear. So I think the next thing to do, I need to find some very, very fine wire to link up the cartridge to this socket here. And again, I haven't got one of those special plugs, so it's going to have to be another dirty djsherz bodge to get the wires in the hole. But yeah, I think that's going to be the next job.